Okay, I think I'm ready to go. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to today's DukeNY Career Conversation, a virtual career and professional development series designed to share the stories of interesting, successful Duke alumni in the tri-state area. And launched in 2020 by the DukeNY board to support alumni and members of the DukeNY community. My name is Gabe Suboyama, and I'm thrilled to introduce today my friend Matt Weiss. Matt and I both graduated in 2000, and we moved to New York City to pursue careers in investment management. Now, a lot of New Yorkers have an exit plan. That is, what would they do if they quit their jobs? Well, many of us can live vicariously through Matt, who's a former public buy-side equities investor and decided to leave that career to become a food entrepreneur. Matt is the founder and CEO of RIND Snacks, an innovative dried fruit company that focuses on the most vitamin and nutrient-filled part of the fruit, which is the rind. You can find rind at Whole Foods, Juice Press, Court Street Grocers, and over 100 locations in New York City alone. Matt, welcome, and please tell us about yourself. What is rind, and when did you start it?
Thanks so much for that kind intro, Gabe, and great to see all these faces on my screen, and a privilege to be invited to speak about my journey and the story of rind. To sort of illustrate, I think, what we are and how we go to market, I have just a couple slides to share. I think with a physical product, it helps to visualize it. So I'm just going to quickly share a screen and give you a sense of a flavor, if you will, of who we are. Hopefully, if everyone can give me a thumbs up if they see the orange on the screen. Okay, great. So the genesis of the business really started around a very simple premise and simple question, which is, if the most nutrient-dense part of the fruit is Mother Nature's original packaging, the rind, the peel, the skin, why as a society do we waste so much? And this picture of this sort of mountain of orange carcasses could be at any juice manufacturing plant anywhere in the world. And in fact, to contextualize it, about 8 billion pounds of annual food waste are citrus peels alone, which are perfectly edible and nutrient rich, but are treated as a feedstock to cattle and pigs. And that's where we come in. We've crafted a line of bold, innovative fruit snacks that shake up a sleepy category with ingredient simplicity. These are whole fruits, roots, rind, seeds, and stem that provide higher fiber, higher vitamin content, and obviously less food waste. And so it's our mission. We say, keep it real, eat the peel. To fast forward, we have a lineup of very colorful fruit snacks that's like nothing else in our category. It's certainly not your raisins and prunes that I grew up on. And like Gabe said, we're actually in about 3,500 stores worldwide today. We are expanding internationally a little bit, and the business is on track to generate over $10 million in revenue. And I'm excited to be with you all today.
That's great, Matt. Thank you so much for that intro to rind. Maybe if we could just back up a little bit, could you tell us a little bit about your childhood, where you grew up, influences, and how you got to Duke?
Yeah, I South Florida native, grew up in Miami, was a restless kid. I was always tinkering with things. I was always daydreaming. I couldn't really focus. I think many of us, if there are parents on the call, there's a word for that. And I have kids who have that. And I fit that bill. But South Florida was an amazing place to grow up. I was outside pretty much year round, digging in the dirt. And the seed of entrepreneurship and interest in natural foods really came from my family and the way I grew up, which was with a healthy halo. I begrudged it as a kid. I just wanted Lunchables and Capri Sun like everyone else. And I was getting a lot of carrots and celery sticks and, rice cakes. And the reason why, and a lot of it came from my dad's side, that interest in natural foods before kale was cool, stemmed from my great grandmother, who I pay homage to as the inspiration for the business. She was a firecracker of a person. She lived to almost 100. She had a health food store in the 1920s and 30s in Flint, Michigan. And the folklore in our family around Helen's great grandma Helen always stuck with me, such that when I wanted to start a company, later in my career in my 40s, the lessons I learned from her were sort of burning bright. So that's a little bit of how, the backstory. And then came to Duke and in 96, and similar thing. I did not, by amazing 4-year experience. I was involved in a number of activities and clubs. I was heavily involved in the Freeman Center for Jewish Life. I see a bunch of familiar faces and names on this call, and it was exciting to see that go from groundbreaking when I was a freshman to the first year of opening in the building. And I'd been involved with the advisory board there for many years. But what really happened at Duke that I think sent me along this path was I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was coming up on graduation. And I was envious of my peers who were very driven and very focused and wanted to go to law school or wanted to go into banking and consulting. And I didn't have it figured out. I still don't think I have it figured out. And but what I did know was I wanted to chart my own path. And I started a company with some friends from Meyer Court my junior year. And that was my business school experience. And it was unbelievable. And I think about it a lot as it relates to what I'm doing today.
And can you tell us a little bit more about kind of that company that you started and how that led into maybe the first few years of your postgraduate life?
Yeah. So the company was a pretty boneheaded idea. It was 99, 2000. So it was peak bubble, and we weren't programmers or coders. We were marketers and idea people. And the concept was be a college incubator for technical students who are looking to commercialize their companies. And we're basically a student venture capital arm and helping these companies raise capital, host business plan competitions. And it was amazing, actually. It was a very unique period in time. We traveled around the country putting on these pep rallies for young students and connected them and funded a number of business plans called Start 'em Up. The world, ran into a wall in March of 2001, and it was time to get a real framework for business and a career. And that started when I moved to New York shortly after the dot-com bubble burst, and that was in the fall of 2001, which was quite a time to move to New York. And I started at a firm called Barron Capital, which is a family-run mutual fund firm that had been an amazing place for me for the last 2 decades.
And you had a tremendous career at Barron, Matt. Can you talk about how maybe the elements of your career there, particularly in the last few years, allowed you to maybe also focus on what would be the beginnings of RIND?
I'm very, very fortunate to have worked at Barron and worked directly with the founder of the firm, the chief investment officer, Ron Barron, who is just an amazing individual, very successful, very humble, and old school in his approach to investing, which really resonated with me. And by old school, I mean an incredible emphasis on the entrepreneurs running the business and their integrity, their track record, the team they surround themselves with, and their ability to take nothing but an idea and turn it into a huge business from just a dream. Barron is one of the largest investors in Tesla from the very early days, as an example. And I had a front row seat working at the firm in listening to entrepreneurs come through. Maybe they were taking their companies public, maybe they were looking for additional growth capital, but they were just sharing these amazing stories, and they were building, they were building things that connected with consumers. And I would go back to my desk, and it was something was missing for me. I was modeling someone else's dream and felt like I wanted to work toward building something of my own. And it was just constant, because you'd meet these entrepreneurs whose passion and conviction in what they were doing was so palpable that the last few years of my time at Barron, I gravitated to the one industry that I knew best, which was food and beverage. I wasn't, a biotech or a software analyst. I love to snack. I love to discover new products. Walking the aisles of a Whole Foods is, fun for me. And I had a knack for identifying whether it was plant-based meat before Beyond Meat came public, big mega trends. And at my first trade show that I was wearing my investor hat for Barron, it's called Expo West. It's happening next month. It happens every year, except for the last 2 years because of the pandemic. It's the Super Bowl of snacks. And as soon as I went to my first one, I felt like I had found my tribe, and I just could not shake that. And that was the very beginning of the journey.
That's terrific. And so at what point did you start to think about making this transition, and what were some of those steps from leaving your very successful career to starting your own company?
So the good thing is, and it's very rare, so I don't take it for granted, I didn't leave. I was able to straddle, the comfortable, familiar life that I knew working at Barron and the path that I was on, and hedge a little bit, because on the side, nights and weekends, I was pouring my heart into this business plan. And I put the pieces of the puzzle together in terms of finding a supplier, first identifying a niche in the market, a gap in the market. And I discovered some unbelievable dried fruit at a farmer's market in California on a business trip. My wife knows this story. I came back and I had like a whole bag of dried persimmon. And it was this fruit that I'd never heard of that was like a revelation. And I wanted to build a whole business around persimmon chips, which we discussed was a bit narrow in focus. And we would sit around the kitchen table, I guess, as a lot of first-time entrepreneurs, and start to formulate this idea of, why is dried fruit treated like it's candy? Why over the years has it gone from being a single ingredient convenient snack to something that's pumped full of sulfur dioxide, has a ton of added sugar, glows, an ungodly color, and is morphed into a shape that hooks kids on thinking it's fruit when it's really candy? And it just seemed like there was a big opportunity to reclaim the category with an authentic product that was mission driven. So back to the food waste story, and that offered, a functional benefit. You get more vitamins and nutrients uniquely concentrated in the rind. And so I put that together with 3 SKUs, and the very first production run, I took vacation days from work to do it. And it started to, my worlds collided in the beginning of 2018, when I went to the first production run in Northern California. I had set it up so that all the fruit needs would be there, the raw material, the packaging, and then I had one pallet, which was 100 cases of product, which is 1,200 bags. And I remember leaving that, and when the first bag came off the line, which had persimmon in it, of course, and that was the beginning. I had no customers. I had to figure out what to do. I took 200 of those bags on the plane back with me, got a lot of weird looks from the TSA agent, and then a pallet of the product, the remaining 1,000 bags, greeted me a week later in front of my doorman building in New York City. And that was the beginning of figuring out what to do.
That's great. We're starting to get some questions in the chat. And so I would encourage anyone who has questions, please direct message me or put them in the chat. Maybe I'll start with Philip's question. Matt, you're in a completely different business now than the one that you came from. Could you just talk about what skills maybe were transferable, and maybe even add, what were some of the new skills that you had to acquire?
Yeah, I felt like I have grown so much from jumping in headfirst to a new industry, sort of by necessity. What I knew I didn't have was, the basic how to sell a product, how to price a product. I knew a lot of theoretical because I was modeling it, but until you recognize, for example, what the world is experiencing with acute supply chain issues now, or inflation, and understanding how it all ripples through, it's just very easy to look at it and not be, to be a spectator and not involved. And so tremendous appreciation for everything that goes into creating a physical product. And a lot of those details are mundane. I think entrepreneurship gets a very sexy treatment, but in reality, I was early days figuring out how to get a barcode that could scan, how to get a nutritional fact panel, and how a food lab could come back and test for vitamin C, fiber, et cetera. Branding, marketing, all these skills that I hadn't developed, that I had to develop. And the most transferable of all, though, is reading people and finding people of integrity to partner with, whether it's an investment partner or a supplier, really spending the time. And I think that's true of any industry and any business. You have to have a sixth sense through multiple meetings and diligence that this is a trustworthy person to get into business with. And to fast forward and put a finer point on that, there's no one more important to this business, than my brother-in-law, who is my partner, and who also left a career in finance to sort of build the business with me. And that was in the beginning of 2020 when we raised some capital. And that level of trust with what is essentially my brother, a family member, has been really exciting and allowed us, through a very symbiotic way to grow this business to some, exciting milestones.
That's great. A question from Maya, and it's about as you scale up, what's your ability to reduce costs? And I think the ultimate point of her question is, how can you make this really nutritious product as affordable as possible for consumers?
Thanks for the question. I think in the early years, it's really important to just get product market fit and to, get your brand out there. You don't have to worry about being priced at a level where it's ready for mass merchants, say like for a Target or a Walmart, but you have to have a differentiated product and brand. And, it has to be affordable, but depending on the product or category you're going after, my advice is to always start closer to the tip of the spear, where you can be an aspirational brand that is an affordable luxury, because you can always move down as you grow. And if you start at extreme value, what we're seeing in the last year of, the type of inflation in the variety of inputs, you won't have anywhere to go. You won't be able to go up. So create an aspirational product and make sure your costing from the beginning is thought through, such that there is a path to, to economies of scale as you grow. Maybe that comes from buying, your raw materials better in greater quantity, from diversifying your supplier base. All of that will come. The first thing you have to do is prove that you have a concept that is tested beyond your friends and family. I'll remember I'll never forget the day that I saw the first order come through Shopify and Amazon that didn't have a family member's name attached to it. And I was like, wow, this person randomly found our product. And that was exhilarating. And you need to really test that out rigorously in the beginning.
There's some questions about your initial seed capital, financing, bootstrapping, and securing outside investors.
Again, I think every entrepreneur's story is going to be different. All I know is my own, which is I had started a company which, when I didn't know anything in my 20s, I shouldn't say that. I was going through Duke, so I was learning a lot. But the risk profile that I had was just off the charts. I was just excited to run through walls and create something out of nothing. But I really didn't know or have a framework that I subsequently learned and gained spending, almost 20 years at an amazing investment firm. And starting RIND in my 40s, I think afforded me a tremendous ability to bootstrap this company. One, I had saved up more than I did when I was in my 20s to bet on myself. So I didn't have to face significant dilution. I was able to underwrite the beginning, proof of concept stage on my own terms. I had no one else to answer to but myself. I had to be incredibly honest. And it allowed us to get to the milestones we needed to, where I was ready to attract some outside capital. And that allowed me to have a little bit of the best of both worlds, where there was an investor who led the round, who had come into contact with me at all the trade shows and was basically said, I'm not going to fund your hobby. You have to be all in, which you would expect of any investor. But he said, when you go all in, I'd like to be the first check. And that gave me the confidence to jump off. It was still incredibly scary and stressful, but as soon as I made the decision, it was like a huge weight was lifted, because when your head and your heart are aligned and you're doing what you want to do and love to do, the stress can be much higher, but it's a different kind of stress.
Great. Maybe some business related questions. I mean, you alluded to some of the things that are going on in the world right now about inflation, supply chain. And I'm curious, as a small business owner, how does that impact you? And then how do you deal with that?
It's so difficult. I mean, the one thing I really did learn and was ingrained in me at Barron was there's no point in, might be controversial, there's no point in staying focused on the macro. It's inherently unpredictable, and cycles will come and go. Interest rates will rise, they'll fall, commodities will rise and fall. They're cycles. And what is constant is there is generational change that always happens. And some of the best ideas are participating, if not leading, generational change. And it doesn't matter what the economic backdrop is. It does to some degree, obviously. Some environments are more fertile than others for starting businesses. But if you have a great idea, and if you have a relentless drive and belief in it, you will find a way. And it helps to have huge secular tailwinds at your back. And I think there are no bigger tailwinds than better for you snacking and a focus on mission-driven, sustainable companies that will be sort of the next, generation of big businesses 10 years from now. And if you're not making the world a better place, either through your product or how you make your product, I don't think you're going to have a business. And I think it's why you see, prior to RIND in the investment world, the growth of ESG related funds. And I think RIND is participating in some of those big trends, and positioning ourselves at that sweet spot was an insight that came from my time at Barron.
Speaking of your time at Barron, there's a question about your modeling skills. I mean, do you deploy them or plan out your business? To what extent have you been modeling these things?
We crash Microsoft Excel every time we try to open it, and the model is incredibly detailed with infinite scenarios. I credit my brother-in-law with that. We've loosely divided the world, where I am sort of chief storyteller, sales and marketing, brand builder, and my brother-in-law Ben is business builder. And Ben has that's where I think it does help to have a partner It's very hard to be a solopreneur and build a big business. I'm sure it can happen, but you need someone to go through battle. And, we definitely over-architect the model, and you have to. But nothing's more important than the unit economics. It doesn't matter. No model is going to be right. That much And you can say you're going to do $1 million in sales now and 5 million next year and 10 million the next year, and you can get it to the cent. You're going to be wrong. And what's most important is, do you have a product that you can make and make money doing, and that is replicable, scalable, and that consumers love? The rest you can figure out.
That's terrific. Maybe speaking of your focus on brand and your brother-in-law's focus on business, how do you balance the two or distinguish the two? Do you just both fire on them at the same time, or is there a little push and pull?
Yeah, we talk about this a lot, and I actually think they're intertwined. And I would, without a vibrant brand and an opportunity to build a platform, another thing we talk a lot about is build platform, not products. We're RIND, but we're not RIND dried fruit snacks. We have a vision that we have to earn the right to expand that would take us into other product categories. And like fruit chips, for example, or salty snacks. Fruit snacks is a $2 billion market. Chips is a $20 billion market. And we think there's big gaps and opportunity for us to shake things up in other parts of the grocery store. And I think that's really important. Is that a brand point or is that a business point? They're related. And I think you need to have both working in concert. And in the beginning, you're mostly brand, and while your business is small, but you can't lose the magic of your story and of your business when you become of your brand, when you become a big business, or you'll have difficulty growing and staying relevant.
That's great. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so I want to be mindful of time. Maybe very quickly, were there ever any times in your as you launched this effort where you kind of panicked?
Every Tuesday, yes. Panicking all the time, but it's the type of energy that like fires you up. And I can't say that I had the same energy before, but when everything's on the line and you're building something and you're the last line of defense and you're reading every customer service email and you're making sure the production run happens and the product gets there, and there is no shortage of things and minutia to worry about. I think it's finding balance. It's, for me, that's my family, raising three kids in New York, which is a whole other kind of crazy. But seeing their excitement, honestly, that's the most gratifying thing, if I can end on that point, is the thrill that I get watching my kids think RIND is their baby, which in many ways it is. And, whether they're working with me at the first demo we ever did of the product in Chelsea Market, or whether they're working on new flavors or taste testing, like that is so cool. That's what I love.
That's great. Well, Matt, thank you very much. I just want to mention to everybody that Matt has very graciously shared with our Duke community a promo code, and it is GoDuke20. You can use it on RINDSnacks.com. Matt, thank you very much for doing this conversation with us. To all of you, thank you for attending. Duke New York Career Conversations will be held this year on a monthly basis on the third Wednesday of every month. Please join us at the next session, which will be Wednesday, March 19th. At that session, we will have Duke alum Phil McKenzie, MBA of class of 99, interviewing Oris Stewart, MBA class of 1989. Oris is the Chief People and Inclusion Officer of the NBA. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thanks, Gabe.